Hello, I'm Monica Britton, CEO and Chief College Access Officer of Black Girl on Campus, and welcome to A Few Minutes with a First Gen, a series I'm hosting this month in honor of First Generation College Celebration Day, which was on November 8th. As my on-campus community knows, I was a first-generation college student, and it was from that experience BGOC was born, to equip, empower, and inspire young Black girls grades 9 through 12 on their path to college. On A Few Minutes with a First Gen, I'll be speaking with women who were and young girls that are first-generation college students and get their perspective on the experience. Today, I am excited to chat with Ms. Stephanie L. Arnold, a graduate of the 2020-2021 highest ranked historically Black college and university, according to U.S. News and World Report, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, FAMU, from where she obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in journalism. Stephanie is a veteran journalist who helps lead digital daily strategy for the website of one of the nation's largest newspapers. She started Wash Creative Strategies, LLC, as a way to use her skills and passion for digital production, writing, editing, audience engagement, and design to help everyday entrepreneurs tell their stories through digital, print, and social media production. In 2020, she launched Serve, Sell, Grow, a digital course where she leverages her years of sales and customer service training and experience to teach entrepreneurs how to amplify their brands and cultivate loyalty through superior customer care. Using corporate principles and her system to win over clients, she helps entrepreneurs implement a structure to solve customers' problems quickly and easily while boosting brand loyalty. A leader in both business and community, Stephanie is the chairman of the board of directors for the Echo Collective, based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and has served on local and regional executive boards and is a two-time international director for our sorority, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I am excited today to bring on a very good friend of mine. I have known Stephanie for, a long time. We have worked on various projects together, and she is one of my front row people for sure in my life, someone that I'm constantly bouncing ideas off of, talking to about BGOC and directions that I should go in and different things that I should do. And she was more than excited to be my first guest in this series. So I'm going to bring her in right now.
Hi, Monica.
Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful, folks. You see she has on the orange and the green representing, what would that be representing?
It would be representing Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, known to some as FAMU. Absolutely. And I started to giggle to myself as I was backstage because I was looking at myself with this jacket on, and I was just like, you know what, I am so extra. But you know what, this is what we do at Florida A&M. I mean, we are proud of our university. You know, all the alumni and the alumni of the university are always everybody that I talk to. If you see regalia on people's cars, we're always stopping and talking to each other. And when you asked me to come on to talk about being a first generation college student, of course I went over the top with my Letterman jacket, which I was so proud of when I first got my Letterman jacket. I went to college actually on a softball scholarship. We are in Division I sports in NCAA.
Come on, D1.
Yeah, we are D1, double A at Florida A&M, and I was recruited to play softball at the championship the 4-time championship team, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, the Lady Rattlers fast pitch softball team. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I know you were talking about first generation college students, but I wanted to just throw in some fun facts to the audience of BGOC so they understand where we're coming from today and why I have all of this extra regalia on today.
So I have to say, I have never, in all the years that I have known Stephanie, seen her in FAMU attire. I just haven't. And when when she entered the studio today. I said, I love it. I love it. You all know how much I love my university, University at Albany. Shout out. I always got to shout out UA. And to see someone and to know someone truthfully as passionate and excited about their alma mater as I am is an exciting thing. FAMU is a wonderful university, as I explained in Stephanie's intro. 2021, 2020, 2021. #1 ranked HBCU. So there you have that.
I mean, listen, I didn't come up with the rankings. I could have told you all that from the door. I don't come up with the rankings, but this is not the first time that U.S. News and World Report has named Florida A&M one of the top universities in the country, not just among HBCUs, but among all universities. And I'm always very proud. You know, obviously, when I went to college at 17, I had no idea about what the ranking would be, or, you know, those were not the things that I looked to when I chose a college. But I am so glad and so very grateful that I chose Florida A&M, because the motto of Florida A&M is excellence with caring. And, you know, consequently, that's how I have tried to live my business life, is to try to be excellent, but to also reach back and to make sure that I'm helping other young women and young men, you know, move in the right directions in their lives when it comes to their academics or whatever that they may need help with. So that's what we do. We're FAMU. We're excellent.
So what made you choose? This wasn't even a question that I had, but something you just said prompted me to ask it. What made you choose FAMU? Like, as you were a young girl back there in Michigan, what said FAMU on your list of schools to choose?
It was not on, FAMU chose me. It was not on a list. Like, I didn't have a list. I didn't know anything about colleges. And frankly, no one in my family had gone to college, and I didn't know anybody in my neighborhood. I came from, you know, the pretty rough neighborhood, you know, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. And we lived on the east side of Detroit. And I was raised during, quite frankly, the crack epidemic. And so we know what that was like in urban communities at that time. I graduated from high school in 1993, and so throughout that time, and we understand what crack did to communities in the urban environments, particularly the African American communities in urban environments. In fact, what you see now in our white counterparts, what opioids are doing to those families and those communities, are very much what was happening to African American communities during that time. And so, you know, we had gangs, we had violence. And we had drugs, and I didn't know anyone in my community that had gone to college. No one in my family, in my immediate family that I knew of, had gone to college or was able to assist me with making any kind of decisions along that line. So FAMU, I was playing softball in high school, and it was really my my high school coach who talked about the fact that he had sent 2 young ladies to Florida A&M on a softball scholarship, and he thought that I could be good enough with enough practice to be able to attend on a softball scholarship as well. And even though I was a pretty good student in high school, I wasn't like a 4.0 student. And so, you know, generally speaking, students who, you know, the 4.0 students and the academic scholarships, the 3.8s to the 4.0s are the ones who get the academic scholarships. And I was at I was in a 3.5 range, but not quite enough to get a full academic scholarship. But my coach told me in the 10th grade, he said, if you can, you know, if you work hard, you can be good enough to get a softball scholarship to Florida A&M, and I can send you to where 2 other women who graduated from high school before me are, and you can have someone down there to kind of look out for you. And that's exactly what I did. I practiced literally 7 days a week for 2 years to try to get good enough to get a softball scholarship at Florida A&M, and eventually I was recruited to go to Florida A&M on this softball scholarship. Now, I had opportunities. I got accepted into other schools, so that it's not to say that I didn't get accepted into other schools. I got accepted into a couple of other schools that were in Michigan, but quite frankly, I wanted to get as far away from Detroit as possible. I inherently knew I love my city, but I inherently knew that I probably wouldn't succeed if I didn't get out of my environment. There were so many people in my community, in my neighborhood, who were wonderful people. But because of the trappings of what goes on in neighborhoods like that, you fall into those trappings of comfortability. You fall into the trappings of crime. You fall into the trappings of teenage pregnancy. My best friend at the time was already on pregnancy number 2. She had already given birth to our first daughter at age 15, and she was already pregnant again. While we were while I was getting ready to graduate, she didn't graduate at the same time that I did. And all of those trappings were there. And I inherently knew that if I didn't leave and try to get as far away as I could, that I would probably forever be caught up in that cycle that some of my other peers at that time was caught. And I was very happy to be accepted to go to Florida A&M, and that's where I stayed. So
that's an awesome story. How did you prepare to apply to college? Yes, you did everything in terms of the scholarship to get into FAMU, the athletic scholarship. However, you said that you were accepted to other universities. So what was it that you did to prepare to apply to college during that time?
Well, frankly, I had a really good guidance counselor. And even though like my school was in the hood and, it wasn't one of the elite schools that people have to kind of test into, I still had really good teachers and guidance counselors at my school at that time who were interested in my success. They saw that I was a student who was ambitious and who was a student that was driven to do well. And people, particularly adults who have already gone on to college, they take note of that, and they spot children like that, and they work very hard to make sure that they're successful. And that's one of the first things that I think I want to impart to people is that, get yourself someone at your school who is committed to your success at high school, because those are the ones that are going to tell you about the opportunities. Those are the ones that are going to make sure that you understand how to apply for how to apply to college, what steps to take in order to apply, how to go about looking for scholarships and different things of that nature. And so I had a couple of teachers who took interest in me because I was involved in other things. I was involved in the National Honor Society. I was the editor-in-chief of the school yearbook. So I had significant connections with teachers because I was involved in these extracurricular activities, and they just took an interest in me outside of the fact that I was also a softball player. Now, a little differently than a lot of students who aren't athletes, when you're an athlete, there's a little bit of a different route that you take when you're applying to college, because you have the athletic departments and the high school coach and then the coach at the university really kind of doing a lot of the legwork for you to make sure that you get in. So it's a little bit different than someone who was applying who does not have a background or the ability to have a sport that they're going for at school, or that they been recruited for. So it's a little bit different. That having been said, though, it's still very helpful to still be able to, because I didn't have a full scholarship. My full scholarship, I had to earn a full scholarship, which came later. It was a partial scholarship. And really having people to explain what grants and loans, I had no idea at the time. I was 16 when I was a senior, and by the time I graduated, I was 17 years old. I had no idea what any of that stuff meant. I had no idea how it affected your credit, how it affects you down the line as an adult. And so being able to talk to people who understand, the significance of, money, and the significance of what it means to borrow money, and that you have to pay it back on all of that. I had no idea about that. And so even though people were focused on getting me to school, which was the main focus, like, let's get her to school, all the other stuff, like, how am I going to, pay this stuff back? How am I going to earn money when I'm here? How do I get money? How do I, what other scholarships are out there? So all those things, even though people worked very hard to get me to school, there were other things that were missing, primarily because the resources weren't there, and or just the information and the knowledge for people who just didn't know. I mean, I was a first generation college student. So people who nobody knew what they were doing. And it was a matter, like, we were just happy that, like, let's get her to school, let's get her there, and everything will figure itself out. And it did. However, that's because I had a softball thing going on. But for women who don't and young men who don't, it's really important to understand how the loans and grants and all that stuff factors into your education, which I had frankly no idea about.
Yeah, you mentioned your coach in high school had spoken to you about FAMU and the students that had gone there before you and all of that. Were there any other schools that you even were halfway considering, be it because of softball or just was even considering going to school on an athletic scholarship, partial or full, part of your thought process when you were in high school? And again, once he mentioned FAMU, was it just kind of like FAMU, I'm not thinking about anything else?
I wasn't even thinking about college.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I think about how tragic it would have been had I not been exposed to higher education, it's hard. It's kind of almost emotional to think about. But I wasn't thinking about college because there was no one around me who was. I mean, I just wanted to do well in school, and my family was like, don't get pregnant, right? Like, and nobody. I was making sure that you go to school, you graduate from high school, and like, don't get pregnant. Like, and yeah, we always talked about, oh, what am I going to be when I grow up? And yeah, because my family considered me to be a smart kid, that they assumed that I would be going to college, but there was no preparation for me to go to college. No one was saving money to send me to school, which I highly recommend people start doing for their children. Nobody had put, I mean, my family just, I came from a poor family who frankly was just trying to make sure that I was fed and clothed. I mean, my mother was a teenage mother. My mother gave birth to me right after she graduated. Like, she walked across the stage at 18, and then like I think she graduated, like I had a winter graduation in January, and in February I came. Mm-hmm. She was 18 years old. And she was just trying to raise this kid by her, she was alone by herself. And she also came from a poor family. My grandmother grew up in the cotton fields in a small town in Alabama called Macon County, Alabama. Her grandfather was a sharecropper. Mm-hmm. Nobody had money to save money. We were just trying to survive. And we knew, I think my mother and my other people in my family inherently knew that I was an intelligent child, mm-hmm. but the college thing was very tentative because no one knew how I was going to get there. So yeah, I mean, so back to your question, I wasn't considering it. And like I see kids now, there's so many resources out here. And of course, obviously there was no internet when we were in school, and people were able to, you're able to have access to so much more information now than we ever had access to. But I wasn't sitting around the dinner table with my mom, saying, hey, what do you think about UCLA? Or what do you think about Michigan State? Or, I mean, like that, those things were not really considerations until really I started playing softball, and my coach started talking about college and started saying, I can get you into school. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I just figured, like, I mean, a lot of my friends, brothers and sisters were working and had really good jobs in labor, like union jobs at like Detroit is the Motor City. And we had at the time, was a thriving car makers, car manufacturers with General Motors and the like. In that at that time they were booming. The manufacturing jobs were booming, and people had really good jobs and were able to make excellent livings, buying homes and everything else, working at factory jobs. And so I was just like, well, I can just always, once I graduate, I can just go into working somewhere like that, or you know what I mean? Like it was not really a consideration. but I always loved school and had a zest for learning, and my counselors knew that, and so they had me fill out some applications at Eastern Michigan University. We had a lot of students who left and went to Eastern Michigan University. We had some Michigan State applications, and there were some other colleges, even like Wayne County Community College, Wayne State is a major college there, and so I filled out applications, and I believe I got accepted to every college that I was accepted by, but it was at home. It was home. It was like in Michigan. Right. And I just had no desire when the opportunity was presented and the seed was planted that I could have the ability to go to Florida to go to college. That was I worked toward that. And that was really like, in like 10th, maybe even 11th grade when we started getting serious about it. But I was like, 11th grade is way late to be thinking about college. It's so late. You should really start thinking about college in 8th grade and really starting to have those kind of conversations around getting a child conditioned to thinking that way, thinking in a more academic way, thinking about how to study and learning those things, which is a whole nother thing that we could spend all day on about, like how I was ill prepared academically to enter into school, even though I was a good student. But yeah, I mean, I filled out applications and got accepted, but I had no desire to remain in Michigan or anywhere close to Detroit because I just knew that I was not going to make it. There was something inherently inside of me that said, I'm not going to make it here. I could probably go back now and be fine. I'm a different, I'm a grown, I'm 44. I have a different level of network of friends. I have an education. I have resources, but as a child, you don't know what you don't know. And it was so much that I did not know. And I'm so glad I am not at all. I'm not at all regretful of my decision to, I really had to get my mom's permission because I was still underage, who my mother was very trepidatious about signing the application. I had to get some teachers and my coach over to talk to her because I'm her only child. And she was just like, my only child, who is my daughter, is going to be going to Florida. What does that look like? And I understand that now, but I was a kid, like, please sign the application. Like, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question that I hadn't even thought about. So, that's essentially what happened. Really just kind of like a late in the game thing that happened that I really wasn't even planning for, and neither was anyone in my family.
Wow. And that's, something interestingly, you said, you went to school, you graduated in 93, and I graduated college. I graduated college in 91. And and that's why I started BGOC, because I am seeing in 2016, 2017, 2020, so many young girls, young people, period. But, obviously my experiences as a Black woman and a young Black girl, so many girls still having similar experience to you and I, not having anyone to talk to about college, not understanding the loans and the grants. And, like you said, how am I going to have money when I get there? How am I going to make money? How am I going to pay for this? Even thinking about going to college and having that conversation, starting that conversation, 8th grade, 9th grade, really hitting the ground running. It's a lot of, later, like last minute, because they just don't know. They'll start at 10th, maybe 10th grade, 11th grade, definitely 12th grade. It's like this mad dash. And not to say that something can't happen and you can't get into a school, but, as the saying goes, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So the earlier that you plan and can start having the conversation, even planting the seed, the better. I wanted to ask you, as a first generation college student, what was, your biggest worry or concern? Like, once mom signed that paper and was like, okay, yes, you can potentially go to FAMU, what was your personal biggest worry or concern, or was there any? You was just excited.
No worries. I am and it's funny because I'm kind of the same way that I am now, which is I have always had this, and I have nothing to attribute this to at all. And probably it's not necessarily a great quality in all situations, but I have absolutely zero fear. Like I had no fear about going, thousands, hundreds, maybe like 1,200 miles away from Detroit. I had no fear about not knowing anybody down there, not having any family. I had no fear about whether I would fit in on the softball team or whether I was good enough. I had no fear about, anything in reference to that. And I have always been someone who has always been, I don't know where this came from, but I was always like, I'm going to whatever opportunity is out there, because I know, and I go back to this, all these smart kids, I wasn't the smart, I was probably the only kid off of my block who went to college, but certainly wasn't the smartest, certainly was not the most talented, certainly was not even the person with the most resources. But it's about taking opportunities, which is one of the things that I hope that young women or anybody who sees this will take advantage of, that one bit of information if they get anything out of this. Opportunities, when opportunities come, do not be afraid to take advantage of the opportunity. And I was never, any opportunity, any area that I was able to see that I could get myself into, that I knew would make me better or get me a little bit closer or get me close to someone who would be able to help me in some way, I did that. And I was absolutely not fearless. And I really didn't have a strong sense of, faith in like what it means to have God's hand or God's covering over your life. I had no concept of that, but I knew inherently that I would be protected. Like if I just took a step toward the direction of making sure that I was bettering myself, or that I was doing something that will get me to any level of success in my life, that I knew that I would be taken care of. And that's what I did. I had no fear. I wasn't like, oh God, I'm going to be homesick. I was not homesick. But that doesn't mean to say that I didn't miss my friends or family, but I knew I was there. I knew I was there for a purpose, and I knew I was there because I was trying to make a better life for myself. And I wanted something outside of what I had seen in my life growing up, my entire life, which was, abject poverty. I did not want to live like that. And I didn't want to be worried about, I have these kids and how am I going to take care of these children, or, living with, your water being turned off and you got to heat up the water on the stove to make like a hot bath and all of that. And you got like, mice and stuff in your home and you're trying to, like, I didn't want to live like that. And that's what that was about. That was my motivating factor for everything, probably even now. Like, I just don't want to live in poverty. You know what I mean? So that's that.
I can definitely attest to the taking of opportunities that since I've met Stephanie, she has moved several times in her adult career, and basically moving towards that better opportunity, as she said, to get her closer to what her ultimate goal is. She has probably lived in about 4 or 5 states since I've known her. Mm-hmm. And I have always been very inspired by that, because I live in New York. I've always been in New York, even went to college upstate New York. I've never lived in another state. And I've always encouraged by people and inspired by people who do that, who will pick up their entire lives and go somewhere else. But of course, in the pursuit of getting closer and bettering. So taking opportunities, that's a great tip. So you already answered this one. This was another question I had, but you answered. But I don't know, maybe you did a little bit. Like, did you find it hard adjusting from high school, like the high school environment? Because I say this a lot, in high school, your teachers will coddle you. They'll do all these things, like, oh, did you study? Oh, you didn't? Okay, well, take the test like later, or different ththings. But when you get to college, it's a completely different thing. Like, the professors are like, oh, you're not coming? Okay, fine, don't, because I will just it's just what it is. They have so many students, but then certainly there are those professors that are like, if you have that rapport and that relationship, they will look out. So did you find it hard adjusting from like the high school environment into college? And if so, what were a couple of strategies that you implemented to just get over that hump?
Mm-hmm. Well, I did find it difficult academically. I was used to just doing well and not really trying that hard in high school. Probably because I was always just I loved to reading, and I love learning. And so I went to school. I went to high school, and I was just kind of like doing well because, it probably, probably I needed more I should have probably been in, um, and working harder if I had known better, but I had no way of knowing this. I really should have been working toward more college level classes. And it was funny. What's funny is I was in the college prep program in high school, but we never really did college level work. So I'm not sure what that was, how that factored in. But yeah, I was absolutely ill prepared as a student. I was prepared as an athlete. I was not prepared as a student. And student athlete, the student comes first. There is no athletics if you fail at being a student. In my first year, in my first semester in college, I failed every class, with the exception of English. I failed every single class, which obviously is unacceptable. And it didn't take my mother saying, "Oh," or whatever. I saw my report card. I just gave it to my mother because I just assumed like, "Oh, I probably did well." And she's like, "No, you failed every class." And she said, "I guess you want to come home, huh?" That's how she said it. And when she said it that way, I was like, "No, I'm not." I was just like, "No, I'm not coming home." And I did everything in my power to not. I think every semester after that, with the exception of calculus, I think I got straight A's every semester, which is very difficult. By the way, it's very difficult to bring your grade point average up after something like that. Still never got my grade point average up to what I would consider to be a respectable GPA. But like, I literally failed every class. So my strategy was, number one, I needed to get a tutor. I needed to find someone who could help me understand, study habits for college, because I probably did no studying in high school. Uh, and I got a tutor. I went to class, and I know that sounds very sophomoric, but when you're presented with the option of going to class, and you can not go to class and really not be there be no punitive repercussions for not going to class immediately. The repercussion is that you miss things and you may not do as well as you should. But I was like, oh, I can miss class and my teacher's not going to call my mom, or this is what my 17-year-old mind was thinking at the time. Like, well, my teacher's not going to call home. But what happens is your teacher doesn't call home, but that report card does, right? And so, you're not doing as well. So I was on the dean's list, and it was not the good dean's list. It was the bad dean's list, because I was failing out of school, and I was on academic probation. And so I had to turn it around, obviously. Number one, so that I can graduate. And number two, so that I can play softball, because you had to have a certain grade point average to play softball. And so, and you had to have good study habits to play softball. This is what they don't tell athletes, unfortunately, because you're on the road, or any sport, because you're on the road. You're not in class when you start playing, when the season starts. You need to develop a rapport with your professors in your season, when you're conditioning in the off season, if you will, so that they know, okay, I'm not going to be here, but I'm serious about my class. You had some professors who even resented athletes because they would use the athletic excuse for being mediocre and not being in class. And I learned that very quickly, and I learned to establish a professional rapport with my professors. So they understood, I care about this class and I care about doing well. But this is how I'm paying for college, so I have to be away. But I want to make sure that I'm still connected with the class, and connected with my work, and that takes a long time to develop that strategy. But also really getting a tutor. In a lot of cases, tutors are free for students on campus. There are labs, math labs, science labs, where there's tutoring services available. And I don't care how good a student you think you are. I think that everyone would benefit, particularly in their first year, from a tutor to help them with the routine of learning how to study, if you didn't have that already. So yeah, that was my struggle. Absolutely.
I loved, not loved, but you said you were on academic probation. Well, guess what? So was I. My first semester there, and because of the transition. So I just hope that people that are watching this, you hearing this will help you prepare in advance so you don't fall on that, or that becomes your reality once you get into college. And then, like Stephanie said, you're, doing this constant chase of trying to get your GPA up because you had such a bad first semester, first year period. And, it's just really hard to get your grade point average up. And then especially if, for young Black girls, if, you go to college and in your mind, you want to be in a sorority. Sororities have like a certain GPA that you need to have. So, you're crazy in your first semester, your first year, and then you're trying to build it back up for the rest of your time there. So you can, maybe hit that goal of joining a sorority potentially, because all sororities have scholarship as one of their tenets, and they're certainly not trying to take a student or invite a student to membership who has, like a low GPA. So academic probation is avoidable if you, as Stephanie said, take into consideration or take advantage of the opportunities of your school. Because I can't say I remember Albany having a first generation college student kind of program in place. It's more prevalent these days because there are so many first generation college students. Like, the percentage is over like 40% still in this day. So more colleges are doing it. But so if your college, and I'm speaking to folks who are watching, if you have chosen a college that has that, take advantage of that. That's another strategy that you can put into play on top of what Stephanie has suggested in terms of, getting a tutor, taking advantage of the labs and all of that. So you can get your study habits together, because promise, studying for college courses is different than studying in high school, if you studied at all, to Stephanie's point. Like, she's like, I don't even know if I studied in high school.
No, I know I didn't.
In college, you most definitely will need to study. It's not something you can skate by or anything like that. So please take advantage and write down. I hope folks wrote down those strategies that Stephanie stated, because they were super helpful. So this might have been more so in your freshman year, maybe your first semester there, or maybe not, because you were a student athlete. It'd be interesting to hear your answer to this. What did you do to did you have feelings of isolation or loneliness? And if you did, what did you do to kind of get past it? What did you do?
No.
She said, no, I didn't have that, because Stephanie is she's very low key right now because we're doing this, but Stephanie is, when I tell you, she's the life of the party typically. So I could totally.
No, I think Well, as the only child though, I was always alone. I was like a latchkey kid, and I think I just got used to being alone, and probably I wanted to be alone more. Like, you're with a team all the time. Of people. I'm with women. You live in the dorm with them. You eat with them. You're traveling with them. You shower with these women. Literally when you're on the road, and so people who are part of organized sports understand this. It is very difficult to have a feeling of isolation at all. You do literally everything together. I think because I suffer from depression, I had other feelings, that had nothing to do with the college, being away at college or anything like that. These are things that I struggle with now because it's a diagnosis. But I've never felt feelings of isolation. In fact, I probably felt more isolated at home in Detroit, because I was always my mom is, in her wanting to protect me from, just the neighborhood. When she left home, I had to be inside the house, and I couldn't allow anybody in. I couldn't allow anybody, I couldn't have anybody over or anything like that. And so I think I probably felt more isolation there than I did in college. It was like I was on my own. I can go anywhere on campus and find people. So, finding people and being out and being, with people, that was never an issue. Also, frankly, I went to a historically Black college and university, which is probably quite different than for, some of the African American and women of color and men of color who find themselves at predominantly white universities and other institutions. And that's probably a different kind of conversation that, fortunately, I don't have the answers to that because I never experienced that.
Yeah, and as someone that did go to a PWI, I can certainly attest to that. Thankfully, I had a very good friend that I had gone to school with since fifth grade who went to Albany as well. So when I got on campus, though, I don't know how I would have, like, what I would have done if he wouldn't have been there. We were like literally on the same quad and all those things. So I was like an immediate friend, and not having to, certainly, get involved or meet different people, even as small as, walking into your dorm room and it's completely different. Like, it's people you've never met in your life. And you have to now not only live with these people, but, starting to figure out, okay, I'm on my own. I can do whatever I want. It was indeed an experience. And I think, like I said, I had a friend there, but it is definitely a real thing. Additionally, when you add a PWI, that's a very fair statement, to feel, isolated or even lonely. But I also want to thank you for the statement and your transparency and, your feelings of depression and your diagnosis, because, schools have definitely gotten better with that, with helping students along in their mental health. And I just encourage anyone who goes off to college, and if you feel, you're feeling whatever it is, anxiety, stress, depression, do take advantage of the school's mental health like resource. I know Albany, they call it Middle Earth, and they just celebrated, interestingly, this year, their 50th anniversary. And I remember Middle Earth being there when I was on campus. I never took advantage of it, and potentially I maybe could have, because of how I felt like even in my freshman year or times throughout my 4 years in university. So don't, as a young person, don't feel a way about, really taking care of your mental health, especially, going in this really, just abrupt transition from a high school environment to a college one. So, Steph, was there anything that you wish you had done during your college years and you didn't because you just weren't aware of it or you didn't know how to make it happen?
Yeah, I wish I had taken advantage of opportunities to learn abroad. I don't know how that would have worked with me playing softball though. So that was probably another thing that I would have had to try to figure out. But there are opportunities. I never even looked into it, which is something that I do regret. Like I didn't go out of the country until I was, in my late 20s. And that is something that I regret. I regret, being more open to opportunities that were, clearly available on campus, but I just thought that they didn't necessarily apply to me. I wish I had been more available to even, there are things that I wish now. I graduated from the School of Journalism. However, there are times where I wish I had been open to other majors that I didn't think that were, things that I would be interested in. I didn't really realize that I was interested in business and entrepreneurship until in my 40s. And I just never explored those things. I just explored one area of my interest. And I wish I had explored other areas of interest, because you can still be a journalist and still be a business major, or you can be a journalist and be a pre-med student. So I wish I had been able to explore some other areas, and I wish I had, I wish I had known that. Of course, you don't know what you don't know. And, if there are things, I think the one thing that would have helped me is that if I saw something that piqued my interest, I wish I had pursued it to at least learn more about it. And if it wasn't something that was feasible because I was a student athlete, then that would have been one thing. But the idea that I never pursued it to learn more information about it is something that I do regret. So again, taking advantage of any opportunity that will allow yourself to be better, to put yourself ahead in some way, to put you closer to whatever it is that your goal is. If your goal is to be a business CEO of a Fortune 500 company, then you should do every single thing in your power that will align you with that, and take advantage of every opportunity that will include learning a second language, that will include, traveling, that will include learning other skills that'll get you, whether it's finance, whatever it is, that will get you closer to that goal. it's a competitive world out here, and we don't really know how competitive it is until you're out here, and everybody is smart. You know, you sometimes you're like, people tell you in high school and even in some pockets in college, oh, you're really talented, or you're brilliant in this or whatever. And that's fine and that's great because it boosts your self-esteem. However, when you're competing for things, everybody is brilliant, everybody is smart. And so how then do you set yourself apart from the same person who's had the same level of education, but who maybe had a different level of exposure? So those are the things that I think we need to think about, particularly Black girls.
That piece you just mentioned about, if you want to be in business, to learn a second language, that is like so key and so major, and just a little understanding as to why it is. I remember I was the chair of a scholarship at my place of employment. And one year, a couple years ago, a young man won, and he could speak Japanese. And when he came up to, young Black man, and when he came up to, accept his award and stuff, he, was kicked a little Japanese, and like everyone was like beside themselves. But that is so important if he's, and I believe his major, or his intended major at the time, was going to be business. And it's so key because, if you're, sitting across the table, like what companies are big in business? What companies are going to be sitting across or people from what countries are going to be sitting across from you when you're trying to, conduct business? And how like major would it be for you to have on your resume, I'm fluent in Chinese, I'm fluent in Japanese? Like that's really going to make you stand out in the crowd. I'm fluent in German, to stand out from the crowd when you're past college and trying to get that career in, the corporate arena. So definitely try to consider that. I think that was something, I didn't even think of or know would have been an important thing until way after, I graduated, how whatever my major was English, but how maybe helpful it would have been to have a minor in whatever, Spanish, or whatever it might have been, just knowing a second language. I mean, I do know one now. It's a off the beaten path second language, but it's still one, is American Sign Language. So that's another language that, depending on what you are interested in, could potentially be helpful. So yes, learning a second language is super helpful.
Yeah, my minor was in French. And frankly, you don't even know English until you learn a second language. Like it's hard for me to explain, but English, the way we learn English as Americans, as native speakers, is not the same way that we learn a second language. We learn all the different parts, particularly for someone like me who was always thrust into like these advanced English courses, because I was a writer. But I didn't really learn all the parts of the English language and the different, the adverbs and all the different parts of speech and all of that until I learned the second language. And because you have to learn all of that from the second language. And I was like, wow, I don't even know English. I don't know English as well as I thought I did because of how I'm learning French. And so I think it's a must for, and listen, I'm saying take a second language, to the extent that maybe it's a minor, and maybe because you're really not going to be fluent in it unless you immerse. You have to do an immersive thing. You can't, or you must have someone in your household or someone that you talk to regularly that speaks it. So I wasn't fluent in it. I would have had to go to France or had someone around me 24/7 where I was immersed in the language. But if you can learn a second language, good enough to understand it, good enough to even read it. Maybe you can't be conversational in it yet, but anything again that will set you apart, anything that will give you additional insight into another part of the world, I think is very, very good. And frankly, for Black women now, the world is getting smaller. The world is getting smaller. Things that you were probably able to do, you can go around the world and you can be like, well, I'm over here and that's that. The world is small, with the proliferation of digital media and the internet and camera phones and whatnot. The world is small, and really we have no excuses anymore about why we can't go wherever we need to go to explore and to do. You just have to take away the level of fear, and you have to be willing to take advantage of opportunities. And that's where I think a lot of times we hit brick walls because we we've never seen it done in our families, or you be the first. You be the first to go overseas. You be the first to learn a second language. You be the first to go to college. You don't have to see anybody. If you can see somebody, it doesn't have to be somebody in your family, but if you can see somebody doing it, even if that somebody is yourself, then do it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? But they're gonna say no. You know what I mean? So what? Try another way. So that's where we are with it.
Now, I think you kind of answered this question because you've said it several times in our time together today, and this is our final question.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to still ask it because you might give a different answer, and you might actually give some more on top of it. What advice would you give first generation college students?
Yeah, I mean, first, be open to everything. Don't say, oh, we don't do that, or I don't do that. And I hate when people, oh, I don't do that. What do you mean you don't do it? You've never done it. I hear people saying it now, and it irks me so badly. I go, I don't do that. I don't deal with that. I don't eat that food, or I don't deal with those people or whatever. No, be open to everything. Because you never know what you may find. You never know what experience or what opportunity you may find. I don't care what it is that's open. Obviously, I'm talking about legal activities. Obviously, I'm talking about things that are going to enrich and enhance your growth and development as a student, as a business person, in the industry and whatever industry you decide. And as a woman, I'm speaking specifically to Black girls because this is, we're the organization that we're talking about right now is about Black girls on campus. But this applies to everyone who's listening, but specifically Black girls. Don't be afraid of, obviously be very careful though about putting yourself in dangerous situations. One of the things that I did, and this is just, I think being, just kind of like young and fearless, is that I loved like partying and I love going to clubs. There's nothing wrong with that. But like, be very careful about who your friends are. Luckily, I had the two women that I talked about earlier from Detroit who were softball players who went down before me, graduated a couple years earlier. I had those ladies looking out for me, and they were my big sisters. And I credit them for literally. I don't think I would have been able to make it through. It was extremely hard being an athlete and a student. And then I also worked a job during the summer. Particularly the first 2 years. And it was very difficult. However, be careful about who you surround yourself with. That's very crucial. We've seen a lot of tragic situations end very badly because people surrounded themselves with individuals who didn't have their best interests at heart. You have no way of knowing that as a young person. But be very, very, keep your eyes open. And be very careful about situations that you put yourself into. I was very lucky that I never had situations of, rape or violence or anything like that. But I had put myself in situations where it absolutely could have happened. I've been to frat parties where, I would go into, I would see a guy and we would sneak off, and let's sneak off and talk. And we would go in the back room and we would talk. I didn't know what was in these back rooms. Luckily, that's what they meant in this situation. What they meant was, yeah, let's go off and talk. Luckily, thank God, that's what we did. But I didn't know these frat houses. I'm 17 years old and I'm going in the back room of some weird house that I don't know, and we're talking. God knows, there could have been. Luckily, these were like really good brothers who, had no ill intent toward me. But what if they did? I didn't tell anybody where I was going. Making all types of terrible ID channel mistakes that could have ended badly. So like, Black girls, just make sure that you are doing your due diligence, make sure that you don't, make mistakes that we know better. Don't go off by yourself in different places. Don't, make sure that you have somebody who has your best interest at heart with you at all times, particularly if you're, if you enjoyed the nightlife like I did. And I enjoyed the nightlife very, very much. But like, I was just the innocent 17-year-old kid who literally just wanted to go out and dance and have a good time. I didn't know anything about people slipping, like little pills into your drinks and stuff like that. I was drinking stuff. Thank God nothing happened. But like, because I had people around me though who had my back, and, make sure that you have that. And, again, but be open to opportunities from an academic standpoint and from a cultural standpoint. I went home. If you have friends that you trust, your roommates or whatever, go with them to their homes on Thanksgiving or whatever. I had an older roommate. She was a nursing student. She was in her senior year, and she invited me. She lived in Tampa, and she invited me home for Thanksgiving with her, and I had a blast. First of all, coming from Detroit, like, first of all, Florida was just beautiful when you compare just the terrain of Detroit and the terrain of Florida, right? And particularly my campus is gorgeous. But then when you go to Tampa, and of course people from Florida, they see this thing all the time, but I had never seen an orange tree. Like, I was just like, and I know oranges come from trees and all of that, but like, to see uh her tree, she had these orange trees in her backyard, and I use that as an example of exposing yourself to things that you don't know about, using opportunities to expose yourself to things that you've never seen before. And just, again, really, I think the most valuable thing is to be careful, be open, and be deliberate about your education. This is such this education, our education system in America, as much as it needs improvement, um, is people come here from different countries to go to school for a reason. No one is stopping you from anything that you want to do. And we are in the unique position, because our ancestors paid so much, where we can go to school and not be persecuted for learning. And so be deliberate about your education. Do not take your time on campus for granted. um, and learn as much as you can. Those are probably going to be some of the best, most carefree days of your life. But learn as much as you can, and make sure that you and be generous. Which is, when you graduate and you go onto your job, make sure that you look back and you grab somebody else behind you and you push them forward. So, be open, be careful, be deliberate, and be what was the word that I used? Be generous to others who are coming behind you. Those are the things that I would say.
Your takeaways. This
My
was so
takeaway.
awesome. Stephanie, thank you for being my
Thank you, Monica.
on a few minutes with the first gen. This was so insightful. Folks, if there's any questions that you have, and you'd like me to ask my next guest, because there will be a next one, I'm working it out as to who it will be. But if you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM or drop them in the comments, or even email me at monica@monicabritton.com. And I will definitely put that in the question bowl for my next guest on A Few Minutes with a First Gen. Folks, Stephanie L. Arnold, please, Steph, tell people where they can find you if they want to, catch up with you, chat with you, take advantage of WASH Creative Strategies.
Absolutely.
Strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I started my business, WASH Creative Strategies, in March of this year. I think March or May of this year. WASH is named for my great great grandfather, Washington, who, as far as we can tell, is one of the first men on our maternal family side who was a free man born in America. And so WASH is named for him. We do, as you mentioned in the bio, we do all kinds of things in terms of helping entrepreneurs tell their stories online and in print. And so you can learn more about what we do and our services at stephaniellarnold.com. And you can always send an email to stephanie@stephaniellarnold.com. But Monica, can I just say, I am so proud of, when you told me about this organization that you were starting a couple of years ago, I was so excited as a first generation college student. And I was like, this is so brilliant. I was like, dang, I wish I had thought of this. Like, this is so brilliant. I'm so glad that you have this as a resource for students like yourself and me, and other young Black girls who are first generation college students. And this is going to be just a blessing to not just them but their parents, who have no idea where to start, and they can use Black Girls on Campus online as a resource for them and their daughters, to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to make sure that they have the most fruitful education life that they can. So I am really excited about this, and I'm really grateful and humbled that you invited me to tell my little story about my college career, my college days. So thank you so much, and I hope this is going to be helpful for folks.
Awesome. Thank you. Shoot, I learned some stuff about you in this, and we've known each other for a long time.
20 years we've known each other. We've known each other for 20 years.
Woo. And folks, we met each other through our sorority. As I said in Stephanie's bio, she is also a member of our beloved Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Yes.
And we work together in one of the international positions that's mentioned in her bio, and that's how we met. So again, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in, watching today, and continue to follow BGOC on Instagram and Facebook. And you can, like I said, learn more about me and what I'm up to over on monicabritton.com. Thanks a lot. Have a great remainder of your day.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.